I'm Amanda Denning, and I chose to do my final project on classism in regards to higher education. It is no secret that higher education is the key to personal and professional growth. Educate our youth to enter the business world, make a positive impact in their communities, and boost our local economy should be a priority in this country. However, higher education is riddled with classism. The high cost of tuition and the lack of scholarships available is causing higher education to be reserved for those who are deemed to be deserving of an education. People considered to be deserving are members of the middle or upper class. Students who are coming from a socioeconomic status are not afforded the same educational opportunities. Redlining and financial aid, lack of information on scholarship opportunities, and lack of support from schools or communities is keeping members of the lower class from receiving higher education, and this needs to change by giving members of the lower class more access to information on higher education and how to obtain the funds required to pursue a college degree. In this paper, we will discuss redlining and financial aid, lack of scholarship opportunities, and lack of support from schools and communities for those in the lower socioeconomic status. According to a graph found from the United States Department of Education, about 57% of all students who enter college are actually graduating. Black males are graduating at a rate of about 33%, and black females at a rate of about 43%. If we take this information and we compare it to another statistic which found that over 70% of black students who borrow money for their college degrees, such as taking out student loans, are not actually receiving a college degree. Taking that information and looking at the borrowers who do not complete their degree are more likely to be unemployed and default on their loans in comparison to borrowers who actually do complete their degrees. So the students, the African American students who are not completing their degrees, are facing long-term economic disadvantages. This was found to be particularly the case for for-profit schools where students of color were overrepresented. In 2007, 2 students of color, 1 Latina and 1 African American, brought a class action lawsuit against Sallie Mae, which is one of the largest student loan providers in the United States. These students alleged that the lending provider, Sallie Mae, was practicing racial discrimination in their lending practices. They alleged that the company was illegally redlining by calculating loan fees and rates on the basis of the racial composition of the schools attended by different students, such that students of color attending colleges with relatively higher numbers of minority students received worse loan packages than white students attending less diverse schools. Sallie Mae ended up settling with these 2 students out of court without admitting any sort of responsibility in this redlining. Many companies nowadays understand the need for higher education, and they're willing to work with their employees to help them get the degrees that they want. So companies such as Lowe's or Starbucks offer their employees a tuition program where they can apply to get some sort of scholarship or financial tuition to go to a college of their choice. However, people that live below the poverty line don't work in these sort of occupations. If you look at the graph provided, we can see that people who are living in poverty typically work in areas such as food prep, personal care, sales, and construction. All of these occupations are high risk, they're health hazards, they cause stress, and because people are working in these areas and they're not making as much money, they have to work longer hours and have less time to devote towards school. The next point I would like to talk about is lack of scholarship opportunities. According to an article written by Clark, the majority of those admitted to elite schools tend to be from well-off families. The number of low-income freshmen who get full financial aid probably doesn't exceed 30,000 or 1% of college freshmen. If we look over at the bar graph provided, it asks the question, do public colleges give middle-class students financial aid? If we look at the first set of bars, we'll see that this is families that make less than $30,000 per year. For a family of four that is making less than $30,000 per year, they would actually fall below the poverty line and not be considered middle class. However, we can see that a majority of these students are not receiving any sort of financial aid, and only about 3.3% are receiving more than $9,000 from their institution. If we go to the other end of the spectrum, we can look at students whose families are making $250,000 and more per year. This is $250,000 and more per year. Once again, we can see that a majority of them are not receiving any sort of financial aid from their school, and only about 2.4% of them are receiving more than $9,000 per year. That number is not very far off from the 3.3% of students that are receiving more than $9,000 per year that are making less than $30,000 per year. In my opinion, students whose families are making $250,000 per year should be receiving financial aid at a significantly lower rate than students who are living below the poverty line making less than $30,000 per year. Another quote from Clark found that students from lower class families were calculated to need an amount that left their families paying almost half of their income to send their children to college. Students from upper class families are more often awarded merit grants and that allowed them to go to school for free. In fact, more than 1/4 of students from families in the richest 25% got state merit grants. So these families are making $250,000 or more per year, yet their children are receiving more merit grants than those who are in the lower or poverty section, and their students are getting to go to school for free, while these families that are living in poverty are paying half of their yearly income to send their children to school. A lot of families that are living in poverty cannot afford to do this because, they do have other bills that they have to pay. They have to pay rent, electricity, car insurance. So for a lot of these families, higher education just isn't in the question because it isn't in the budget. Another direct quote from Clark found that PEO researcher Tom Mortensen has found that families earning less than $70,000 on average don't receive the amount of scholarships and grants they need to meet the stingy budget formula the government uses to determine a student's need. I would think that if a student is from a family that's making less than $30,000 per year, then there would be a great need, and there shouldn't be some stingy budget formula to say, like, your parents cannot afford to send you to school, let us help you out. The final point that I would like to look at is a lack of support from schools or communities for students that are living in lower socioeconomic status. I know that my daughter goes to a very nice school in a very nice neighborhood, and they recently were doing a fun run fundraiser to get iPads in their classroom. When I was in school, I actually was part of the lower class, and when we were doing fundraisers, it wasn't for to have, like nice iPads and stuff in our classroom. It was to have basic essentials such as books and paper. So that just kind of sets a tone to show you that, different classes and different communities and levels of school have different priorities. One thing that I saw from Stricker was that he found students in the lower class appreciate having teachers and staff that are from their background teaching at their institutions. That way they kind of find a sense of belonging. When you have students from poverty areas or, lower class backgrounds attending institutions that are just filled with teachers and staff members from higher or middle or upper class backgrounds, we found that they don't really understand the situations or disadvantages that their students faced, and they're not adequately able to assist them. Stricker, found that a lot of these teachers and faculty members would apply their own background and status to the students. So they would take their life experiences and assume that everybody had lived that sort of life, and that's how they would formulate their expectations and their examples and their explanations. And a lot of students who aren't from these upper or middle class backgrounds wouldn't understand what they were talking about. In addition to lacking support and understanding from their teachers and staff members at the schools and communities, many lower class schools may not have the funding available to offer their students access to different scholarship or financial aid information. I know that some schools don't have technology centers, like they don't have computers or internet access, and when these students are coming from lower class or poverty backgrounds, obviously they don't have the internet access at home either. So they're kind of getting left behind as far as looking at these opportunities for funding and financial aid to go to school. The good news is I have a plan to help these students from the lower socioeconomic status enter the world of higher education. My plan to combat this idea of classism in higher education is to create legislation that prohibits lenders from setting interest rates based on race or income. There needs to be an affordable standard for all borrowing. Interest rates should be set low enough for a family that is making $35,000 per year to be able to repay the money that they took out. Second, scholarships should be based on academic merit. Students in the lowest 25% of the population should have the same accessibility to academic scholarships as those in the highest 25% of the population. Also, scholarships should be easily accessible to students from every walk of life. Students from low-income communities should know about the scholarships being offered by private institutions and companies. Finally, I think that there should be a position at all schools for a financial academic advisor. This would be a person or a team of people that helps students find scholarships, merits, grants, and loans that can help them attain higher education. This person or these people should also be able to help students look over their financial aid awards to make sure that they're getting the most help available and that their interest rates are at the best rates available. This position should be filled by people who understand that not all students have access to a computer or the internet at home, and possibly even at school, and they should be able to assist them accordingly. These people could help assist students to get to the public library, let them know how to apply for a library card, which websites to go to, and who to talk to in order to find out further information. I believe that there should be a position in all schools for just one person or one team of people to do nothing but look out for the interest of every student who wishes to pursue higher education. This would fall in line with the coach effect. People who want to help other people succeed.